Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Right, so for today we are using or we are going to learn new topic of index number. Okay, so the topic is given the name of index number. So we have a few subtopics in the topic of index number. There are about one, two. Okay, the topic is divided into two main different topics, which is the first one is unweighted index number, the second one is weighted index number. Okay, before we continue with index number, okay, when do we use when do we use the concept or the application of index number in our real life? Okay, this topic is something related to the when you want to know the changes that happen in two different unit of time. Okay, for example, you are trying to check whether there is increment or decrement that happen for any of the price of a commodity or quantity of a something. You can use index number. Okay, so this is the example when to use the index number. Okay, I'm having the price of nasi lemak here. Price of nasi lemak for the year 2019 and for the year 2020. Let's say the price of nasi lemak, a very basic nasi lemak, for this year is RM1.50. For last year was RM1. Okay, so for us to calculate the index number, first thing first is we need to know which one is going to be the base period and the current period. Okay, normally the base period is the period earlier, base period is the period earlier, and the current period will be the later one. Okay, so now for this case, okay, we are assuming that 2019 will be our base period and the current period is 2020. Okay, so what is Pn over P now? Pn over P now is P price of current divided by price of base times by 100. Okay, so now because we know that price of current is the price of current happened for the price for 2020, so we are going to put it as the numerator, and price of base is price for the nasi lemak on the year 2019, therefore that will be the new denominator. Okay, and when we substitute into the formula, we get something like this, and we calculate this and we get around the value of 150%. Okay, so what are we going to interpret from the price of nasi lemak that we get here? Okay, we can see that the price of nasi lemak has increased by 50% for the year 2020 as compared to the year 2019. That will be a complete sentence. But if you don't want to put a very long sentence, you can just put it as the price of nasi lemak has increased by 50%. How do we get this 50%? We are going to compare every value that we get with the value of 100. Okay, if it is exceeding 100, meaning it will be increase by 50%. Okay, but if it is lesser than 100, for example 80%, you get 80% over here, you will be saying that the price has decreased by 20%. Okay, that is the way we interpret about the index number. Okay, for a reminder, the current price not necessarily be the one later than the base period. Okay, meaning the base period not necessarily have to be what we assume as the one earlier. It depends on what we are trying to find out in the question. If it is stated otherwise, then we just need to follow what is stated in the question. Okay, it might be also using 2020, calculate the index number for the price of nasi lemak for the year 2019. So mentioned earlier, using 2020 as the base year, calculate the index number for 2019. So for this case, you have to change the place, which means that the base period is 2020. Okay, and the current period would be 2019. So that is the way on how we deal with the question given to us. Right, so now we are going to continue with the content of this topic of index number. As I mentioned earlier, we have for the part of unweighted index number and the part of weighted index number. Okay, we are going to cover this one first, unweighted index number. Okay, a very basic one is what we call as simple relative index number. Okay, simple relative index number, that is the very basic one. The current value divided by the base value times by 100. Current value divided by the base value times by 100. Okay, and you have to check, the keyword here is simple relative index number. When it is just a relative index number, it is just involving one item. Okay, either it is about the price of something or quantity of something, just one item. Right, for example, just now we have seen the example of price of nasi lemak, so that is actually an example of simple relative index number. Okay, so now I am going to show the way to interpret as we have just now. Okay, let's say we get the index number equals to 110. Okay, the way to interpret would be the price or the quantity has increased by 10%. Okay, the price or the quantity has increased by 10%. Okay, if you are calculating the price index, of course you are going to mention the price, but if you are calculating the quantity index, therefore you will be saying about quantity. Okay, so this is the second example. If you get the index number of 92%, okay, and then you will be saying that the price or the quantity has decreased by 8%. How do we get 8%? Okay, is by comparing the value of index number that we have and the value of 100. What is the difference between them? So when it is lesser than 100, we put it as 100 minus 92, you get it as 8%. So it's a decrease of by 8%. Right, that is the first one. Okay, we continue with the second one now. Okay, I would like you to see the main difference between these three. We have 1, 2 and 3. Okay, for your information, all these, okay, if you can see, they are just having the same pattern of current divided by base, current divided by base. Okay, so the only different things that we have to check or to clarify before we use any of the formula is to find the words given or the thing that you want to find. Okay, for example, this one is about simple average of relative index. So we have the word average here. Okay, what is the meaning of average? Okay, you have to find out, let's say we have a few items, not just nasi lemak, it might be nasi lemak, nasi minyak, nasi biryani and so on. Okay, so we have a few items and we have calculated the index number for every food that we mentioned just now. Index number for nasi lemak, index number for nasi minyak, nasi ayam and so on. Okay, and then after you have calculated your relative index, it might not be that easy for us to interpret or for us to mention everything that happened for every type of food that we mentioned just now. So one of the way to make it easy for us to just put that on the whole or as an average is by having the average index number. So what is the concept of index average? Before this, we have learned that the summation of the index number. Okay, we have learned that anything that we would like to find as average, we have to divide by the number of items involved. So this is the same case. And here is depending on how many items that you are talking about or you are finding just now. Okay, so this one is a complete index number for each of the item that you are talking about. Okay, you have to find one by one index number of nasi lemak, index number for nasi minyak, index number for nasi ayam, for example. So if we are having 3 items, therefore we'll be dividing by 3. Okay, that is how you calculate simple average of relative index. Okay, that is simple average of relative index. The next one, okay, this is the word aggregate. Okay, aggregate. Okay, instead of having to mention about all uh, the individual price of the nasi lemak, nasi minyak and nasi ayam, we can also just try to put it in on the whole, which means that we just total up the price at first, and we total up the current price and the base price, and then only we calculate the index number. So that is what we call as aggregate. Aggregate meaning something that is cumulated, or what we call as, yeah, cumulated value, right? So aggregate is when you sum up first, sum up the price, sum up the price of current, sum up the price of base, then only you multiply by 100. This is what we call as simple aggregate index number. Okay, so that is the difference. Okay, we have these three. You have to understand the difference between these three. The first one is just involving one item. The second one, we can actually involve a few items. This is the same, we involve a few items, but this one you have to find the index number for every item first, then only you add the index number and you get the average of the index number. This one is the other way around, which is you total up the price first and you total up the quantity of that item for that particular current and base period, then only you multiply by 100. Okay, the way to interpret will be just similar to what we have already mentioned earlier. Okay, that is what we have for that tree. Okay, maybe to add a little bit on aggregate and average here. Okay, for average, you are mentioning the index number as on the average. I mean, when we interpret, we say that the price of all the or all the kind of nasi that we mentioned has increased or decreased by 10%, for example. So that is how we interpret, meaning we see that as on average. This is not on average, this is on the whole. Okay, so we cannot see as individual nasi lemak anymore, I mean an individual type of nasi anymore. We are mentioning on the whole, the price of all the nasi has increased or decreased by what percent. Okay, that is the difference between average and aggregate.